Greetings and welcome everyone. My name is Lokita Maka. We come back with grade 12 content. I'm going to continue from the last um, screencast I posted, which was on animal reproduction. So today we're going to start on synchronization of oestrus. We are also going to touch on mating. Now, forgive me regarding my voice. I've got flu, so you'll realize there's a change, a little bit of change in my voice, but hey, we move. So you're probably asking yourself, what is the synchronization of oestrus? What are we talking about here? So this is basically getting all the cows in a head to cycle at the same time so that they can be impregnated within a short space of time. So this is done by treating cows with hormones. So now when we're talking of synchronization of oestrus or estrus, it's up to you how you pronounce it. This is when all cows are on heat at the same time. So there are various methods that you can use to synchronize estrus, right? Now, one of the methods is that can be used is a prostaglandin injection, which allows cows to come on heat. Then we have a progesterone that can be injected or implanted under the skin. And now, when it wears off, then the cows will cycle together. Then we have a combined estrogen and prostaglandin that can be used in feed. Then, when the hormones are stopped, then the cows will cycle together. Now, this does cause a decrease, though, in fertility. Then we have a gonadotropin and prostaglandin, which can be used to cause mature cow. So these can be combined together. Then they can be used to cause mature cow to cycle together, but it's not as effective on heifers, right? Then we have what we call controlled internal drug release, CIDR, which is a progesterone releasing implant that can be placed in the vagina. Now, this is easy to use and doesn't require any injections. So, as we have mentioned now, we said synchronization of oestrus refers to getting all cows to cycle at the same time, right? So, what are the disadvantages? What are the advantages of this process? Right? We have to look at that. You have to understand the advantages as well as the disadvantages. Now, one starting with advantages. Now, the shortening the calving season or having cows born in a short period, right? Another thing is that cows have a longer rest period between calving and mating, and heifers and anostrus cows can be induced to conceive as well. Another thing is that moving the breeding season to when it suits the farmer or the market. So now you can play around the breeding season. You can work around your breeding season to when it suits you as a farmer or when it suits the market. Also, another advantage of synchronization is to help us to improve uniformity of the cows at weaning or sale. And less time is spent monitoring cows for oestrus. So now you will know that, okay, they will be on heat at this particular time. So you will spend less time now monitoring the cows on oestrus, right? So also, the calf performance and winning weights can be monitored more accurately. But now, coming to the disadvantages, right? Now, one of the disadvantages is that there can be limited number of cows that can be inseminated at the same time, right? Now, also, cows must be cycling and they need to be in a good condition for them to be inseminated. Also, now, you need to have good handling facilities. Now, this process requires high level of management. And another thing is that you need to perform pregnancy tests now as a farmer regularly. And now these can be expensive. Now, this process can be a little bit expensive for small scale production, but for commercial purposes, maybe it may not. And also, it is labor intensive and requires skilled labor. Now, let's look at natural mating, right? So we've got two ways of mating. We've got natural mating, then we've got the biotechnology and artificial mating or artificial insemination, right? So now coming to natural ways of mating. Now this is the simplest and cheapest way to reproduce cattle. It requires less management. Now, the farmer only needs to place enough bulls into the head. For example, one bull per 25 or to 30 cows, but some bulls can service as many as 50 cows. So, at the start of the mating season, um, you need to place enough bulls, right? And then you can remove them after 2 to 3 months. Now, all animals should be inspected prior to the mating season and should be in good condition. And pregnancy testing should be done after the mating season to ensure a reasonable conception rate has been achieved. Right, as you can see in the screen, now that is basically a clear picture of natural mating. These cows are mating here. So now what is the mating behavior? We have what we call mating behavior that you need to understand. So now the cows that are on oestrus will look for dominant bulls. Now the bull will follow cows in oestrus, testing her urine, licking and smelling her vulva, right? Then the cows will release pheromones which indicate oestrus to the bulls. Then bulls will display flamin response, curling his toe lip and stretching his neck, pawing at the ground, bellowing, tongue lapping, and licking the cow. Now, those are the kind of behavior as a farmer you need to look for that shows that okay, now these cows want to mate now, or the bull wants to mate now. Also, dominant bulls may fight off subordinate bulls, right? Then we've got various factors that regulate mating behavior among bulls. For instance, hormones, we've got social factors, then we've got senses. Now, in terms of hormones, we've got testosterone, right, which is a hormone that dominates the bull's behavior. Now, it increases aggression and also sexual behavior. In females, the effect of estrogen dominates during oestrus. Then we've got social factors. For instance, dominance among bull plays a vital role in determining their sexual response. Now, bulls raised in isolation and young bulls often show a decreased response and should be introduced into an actively breeding herd in order to learn sexual behavior from older bulls. Then we've got senses. The other factor that regulate mating behavior is senses. Now, bulls and cows rely heavily on their senses to instigate the sexual response. Now, both bulls and cows respond to the smell of the opposite sex, especially a bull to the smell of cow in oestrus. Now, the site plays a vital role in learning of sexual behavior from other animals and arousal. Bulls and cows are very sensitive to touch, and cows respond to the muzzling and licking of the bull. A bull is also sensitive to temperature and responds best to a slightly warmer temperature. Now, coming to the stages, the main stages, 5 main stages of mating. Now, the mating behavior has a sequence of stages that is followed by individuals. One, we have courtship. Now, this is when sexual attraction is expressed by both individuals and their behavior. Smells, sound, and posture guide each animal. Now, this then process ends with mounting, right? So now, when we're talking of mounting, we're talking about when a female stands while the bull stands on his rear legs, right? Then rest on the rear end of the cow. Now, this is when it mounts on the cow. The bull now mounts on the cow. Then, what happens after that, right? We have what we call copulation, right? So copulation occurs when the penis of the bull is inserted into the vagina of the cow. Now, the bull's penis is semi-solid and is extended by the sigmoid muscle. Then after that, we have ejaculation. Now, this particular process occurs during copulation when semen now is deposited into the cervix, right, through the urethra of the bull. Then after that, we've got dismounting. Now, this is when the bull removes himself from the cow. Then another important process is during mating is fertilization. Now, fertilization occurs when one spermatozoon penetrates the wall of the ovum, right? Now, this can only take place if a large number of spermatozoa reach the ovum, as it requires the enzymes of many to break down the wall sufficiently for one to enter. Now, let's look at artificial insemination and biotechnology. So, there are a number of reasons why farmers would want to use artificial means to produce calves. At the same time, there are drawbacks to these processes. Now, let's look at the advantages and disadvantages of using biotechnology, right? So, one, when we're looking at advantages, right, there could be a rapid genetic improvement, and it is cheaper than buying expensive stud bulls. The risk of sexual disease transmission is also minimized. Breeding can be well managed, especially in combination with synchronization. So you can be able to manage now the breeding season, right? A farmer has access to top bull semen at a reasonable price. That is an advantage. Now, biotechnology also allows productive bulls and cows to produce far more offspring than possible naturally. Now, biotechnology also allows farmers to breed many animals than that are more uniform, but with disadvantages. Um, this technology can be expensive, right? And it also requires highly skilled labor and management. There's a possibility of rapid spread of diseases, especially if one bull is affected. Then you have to inseminate various cows using that semen. Then there can be diseases that can spread rapidly. And also, another thing that can spread rapidly is undesirable genes. So let's say there are genes that you were not aware of that are contained in the semen. Then you insert in the cow, then they can spread, right? It also requires special facilities and hygiene, and Another thing is that the variation in genes now in that particular head can be decreased. So now this decreases the head's ability to adapt to change. Then it also requires specialized equipment. Then let's come to artificial insemination. What is artificial insemination? What does it involve? Right? So this involves the deliberate introduction, right, of sperm into a female's uterus or cervix for the purpose of achieving a pregnancy by means other than natural sexual intercourse. So now this is the opposite of natural mating. So you are introducing a sperm to the female or to the uterus of the cow by artificial ways, right? So this involves collection of semen from quality bulls, checking now the quality of that semen, and also diluting the semen to make many straws of variable semen, also cooling and storing of the semen correctly until it is needed. And then it also includes or involves thawing of semen. And then the last thing it involves, it's inseminating the cow at the right time. Then we've got various methods of collecting and diluting semen. Semen can be collected using an artificial vagina or electroejaculation. Now, bulls can be trained with pheromones to mount a dummy of a cow and ejaculate into an artificial vagina for collection. They can also be stimulated to ejaculate by low voltage pulsing current from a probe placed in the anus near the prostate gland. Now, the semen is inspected for quality after that. Then the following criteria are checked. Now, it needs to be milky white in color. And then also, there should be more than 80% of spermatozoa that are mobile, and also less than 20% of spermatozoa that are deformed. So the spermatozoa that are deformed should not be more than 20%, and those that are mobile should not be less than 80%. Right? Then, after evaluation, now the semen is diluted to make sure that it can be used to inseminate a large number of females. Then, the amount of diluent. The amount of diluent, which is also called a sperm extender, that is added depends on the motility and concentration of the sperm. Now, the diluents also help to preserve the fertility of the semen and allows the semen to be frozen so that it can be used at a later stage or later date, right? Now, the different diluents could contain nutrients such as skim or powdered cow milk or egg yolk. Now, antibiotics to prevent infection by microorganisms, glycerin or similar chemicals to protect from freeze damage, also a buffer solution to help to maintain the pH. Then after that, the semen is then placed into a plastic straws, which are cooled to negative 190 degrees Celsius and stored in liquid nitrogen until required. When required, then they are thawed in warm water, about 35 degrees Celsius before insemination. So insemination can only be done on cows in oestrus, and timing is very critical in this one. Now, this is done with one arm in the rectum to feel for the cervix, then through the wall of the rectum, and then the other hand guiding the tip of the pistolet to the cervix. The semen The semen is then deposited into the uterus. Sorry. Okay, now let's come to the embryo transfer. So now, what is the embryo transfer? So this refers to the harvesting of embryos from genetically desirable cows and implanting these into surrogate cows. So this is one of the biotechnologies. So this technology enables a farmer to produce as many cows from a single cow in a year, or to produce beef cows from dairy cows, right? Now, it involves treating cows with follicle stimulating hormone, which we call FSH, to cause superovulation, which is the release of many oocytes. And then the cow is then fertilized using artificial insemination, and then the fertilized embryos are then flushed from the fallopian tubes using a Foley catheter and a flushing liquid, right? So after that, now the embryos are then inspected from for viability and are either frozen or implanted into suitable surrogate mothers immediately. Then the embryo develops and is born naturally to the surrogate cow. So there are both advantages and disadvantages to embryo transfer. Now, these are summarized in this table. Now, with embryo transfer, the advantages are that it increases the number of offspring that are produced by superior females, and then old and injured animals which are not capable of breeding naturally can still be used to produce offspring. And embryos can be sold, thereby increasing income to the farm. Another thing is that it is easier to export embryos compared to exporting live animals. The productivity of a valuable female is extended and does not limit the number of offspring, which would be the case when breeding and calving happens naturally. But in terms of disadvantages of embryo transfer, one, it is expensive, right? And why is it expensive? Like the hormonal preparation of the donor and recipient females is costly, and also you need a skilled operator or skilled practitioner um, to flush embryos from the reproductive tract, and also the success rates can be low. Therefore, there is also a risk that embryos could become infected during the process. Then let's come into cloning. So cloning in biotechnology refers to processes used to create copies of DNA fragments, right? Cells or even organisms. Now, cloning by nuclear transfer. So, we've got different kinds of cloning. We've got reproductive cloning and therapeutic cloning. Gonna get from those. So, what happens here? Um, Cloning by nuclear transfer includes producing an exact copy of an existing animal. Now, it is done by injecting the nucleus of a somatic cell from the animal to be cloned into an unfertilized ovum or egg cell. Then the ovum's own DNA is removed. Now this results into the new cell that will divide, normally forming an embryo that is identical to the donor animal. Then the embryo is placed in the uterus of a surrogate mother where it grows to term. So as I have mentioned that we've got two ways, right? We've got a reproductive cloning, then we have therapeutic cloning. So, in terms of reproductive cloning, this is basically what I have mentioned above. So, the nuclear transfer can be used to clone an organism, right? But now, in terms of therapeutic cloning, now, therapeutic cloning is used to make copies of tissues or organs. and does not have agricultural application at this stage. Now, cloning has been used successfully to successfully clone high productive dairy cows and was the first experimentally on sheep. The first successful sheep clone was Dudley, and the successful cow was called Daisy. The first successful cow clone was called Daisy. So, this is something that we have discussed in grade 10 when we're doing plant cells and animal cells. Then we come to advantages and disadvantages of cloning. Now, in terms of advantages, now cloning produces high yields of animals, which means improved productivity in the agricultural sector. And then, by cloning endangered species, it can help to preserve biodiversity and prevent species from being extinct. Cloning can produce genetically identical animals that may be used for experimental research. Now, with therapeutic cloning, organs needed for transplant could become available on demand, eliminating the need for waiting lists for transplants. Now, in terms of disadvantages, now cloning may need many attempts before the procedure is successful. So you need to undergo different experiments. Then often cloning fails during pregnancy, and or the results in birth defects. The stem cell research is ongoing and currently is not usually economic valuable. Now, in terms of therapeutic cloning, it is condemned by some on belief or other grounds that they feel that the death of embryos during the process could not occur. Now, it could lead to a lack of variation in species as people decide to only keep the best performing animals. Cloning could produce clones that share susceptibility to problems such as diseases. That's it from me. Thank you so much for joining me today. Please, if you're new to this channel, please subscribe, like, and share. If you are returning subscriber, thank you so much for the support. Don't forget to share as well. Share with other people. Ask questions below. Please, everyone, please make sure you comment on the section below. Give guidance on the topic that you would like me to cover, especially with grade 12 agricultural sciences. Please advise on what I should cover next. Then I'll definitely be glad to do that. Otherwise, that's it from me. Thank you so much for joining me. Until next time.